Hi, I'm Sharon from Budget Crafty Mama. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make these little oven mitts. They're called finger thumb oven mitts. I think they're brilliant. They're much less clumsy and cumbersome than the other ones. So we're going to be making a set of these. I'm also going to be giving away a set of these at the end of this video. I'm going to be telling you how you can win a set of these completely free. And the winner can choose whichever set they'd like to win. So if you just stay tuned to the end, I will tell you how you can win one of these sets of these little oven mitts. So let's get started making them. For this project you're going to need a few items. You're going to need a rotary cutter. So either one of these would do. You're going to need a piece of paper or a piece of card to make your template out of. I usually like to use this sort of brightly coloured card because then when I'm cutting out on like a very pale thing, it's easier to see the card. You're going to need a hard ruler for using for the cutting and obviously for the measuring as well. You're going to need a good pair of fabric scissors and a pair of scissors that you don't mind cutting paper with. I never cut paper with my good fabric scissors. You're obviously going to need your fabric. I've chosen 4 fabrics today for doing mine. And then you're going to need something called Insa-Bright, and this is it's like an insulated fabric that's sort of got like a foil in the middle of it. And this is what you use for making sort of oven gloves and hot pads and for covering ironing boards and things like that. So you're going to need some of that. And you're going to need some wadding of some sort. Now a lot of people say you can use like this polyester, the thin polyester wadding, but I always feel this melts. So under extreme temperatures, I know you're going to be using the Insa-Bright for the bit that you're going to be using on the oven, but I always feel that this, you know, there's the chance that this is going to melt and it's not going to last very long. So I always use this wadding. It's 100% cotton and it's more heat resistant. It's not going to be affected as badly. This is what I use for making my pot holders and that as well. So I just buy this in bulk. So I'm going to be using this. It's thinner, it's easier to work with, but it gives just as much insulation as this. If you can see the different thicknesses of it, I don't know if you can see that. The 100% cotton's quite thin and this is quite thick, and it's harder to work with, and it makes it a bulkier item and not quite as professional a finish, I don't think. But if that's all you've got, it will work. And then you're also going to need a cutting mat of sort. I've got this great big cutting mat that's permanently on my table, but I've got this little cutting mat because as I'm cutting around this pattern, I like to be able to sort of spin this around as I'm cutting, and I think it just makes life easier for me. So we'll start with making the pattern. I've already made my pattern, but I'll show you how to make one. I'm just going to do it on this piece of paper. And first of all, what you've got to do is make a rectangle that is 6 inches by 7 3/4. So my ruler is 6 inches wide. So I'm just going to put my ruler on the paper and I'm just going to measure it up to 7 3/4. And I'm just going by this little line here. That's my 7 3/4 line. Got it lined up there and lined up there. So I am just going to draw around that. And that is my rectangle that I'm going to use. I won't bother cutting it out. I'll just hold it over a bit so you can see. There's my rectangle. But you could cut it out at this stage and make life a little bit easier. Then what you're going to do is you're going to find the centre of the top, which if you've done it 6 inches, it will be, see, there's my 6-inch line. It will be 3 inches in the middle. I'm not being overly accurate because I'm not going to cut this out. I've already got my template pre-cut out. This is my template already done. So, and then you're going to measure down 2 inches at the sides. So you're just going to put your ruler on there, measure down and mark where 2 inches is there, and the same on the other side, mark 2 inches there. And then you're just going to join those points up. So the centre point you've done at the very top. If I zoom this in a little bit, I might be able to see it a bit better. So the centre point that you marked at the very top there, you're going to join up with this line you've just made at 2 inches on the side. So you're just going to draw a line across there, and you're going to do the same on the other side. And then you're going to go to the bottom and you're going to measure 1 inch from each side and mark that. So from the line on that side, I'm just going to mark 1 inch there, and then I'm going to mark 1 inch in from that side as well. So you've got 1 inch in there. And then what you're going to do there, I don't know if you can see that, just marked your inch in from, and then you're just going to take that point at the bottom that you've marked up to the other point that you'd marked 2 inches down from the side, and you're just going to connect those 2 dots. So as you can see now, I don't know if you can see the pencil lines, and then you cut that out. That's your template. Now if you're wanting to use scrap fabrics, I would make 2 of these, and then I would measure 3 inches from the bottom on one of them and draw a line. So you'd have one that's complete, and then you'd have one that you've drawn a line, and then you cut along that line that's 3 inches, which is what I've done. So I've got a large one, and then I've made a second one, and I've cut it in half, and this will give you your templates for the back pieces for these smaller pieces. These 2 are your templates for those smaller pieces. Yeah, and then this big template would be for these bigger ones. But if you're not making it out of scraps, you can just make one big template, and then you can just cut the one in half as you need it. So that's how you make your template, and then you just cut that out. Now I've always make mine on card because I always make lots of these, so I've got mine made in card. Next, what you need to do is get your fabric. Now I've chosen these 4 fabrics, and I'm going to cut them all at the same time because I'm confident, but if you're not confident, cut them one at a time. So I'm going to lay them all flat on the board, and I'm going to put sort of right side up, right side down, and then right side up, right side down, and then I'm going to fold them in half because I'm making 2 of these. I'm making another set of these, so I'm making another 2. So now I've got that like that, I just need my large template, and you just need to line that up on there. I've noticed on a couple of these I've got the salvage, so I'm just making sure that I'm staying well away from the salvage edge, which is like the cut off edge. You wouldn't use that, and I'm just making sure that I'm well away from that. I'm completely on the fabric all the way around. And then what you basically do is you put your ruler on and you line it up. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit more now. You line it up, the ruler up with the edge of your template. Just gonna put my glasses on. You hold the template heavy, you open your blade, and you put it right against the and you cut. Put it right against your thing and you cut, and it should give you a nice clean cut. If you've got a sharp blade, it should give you a nice clean cut. If it's not, either use less layers of fabric, or change your blade, get a fresh blade. I always like new blades on mine. And then rather than repositioning that thing, I'm going to turn the board rather than turning the fabric, and then I'm going to just line it up again with the edge of my template there. Now hold on hard and cut straight off. Let's see it. There you go. And then I'm going to do the same again, turn the board. And there we go. So that's all of mine cut out in one go. So now all you have to do is decide which pieces you want for the full pieces and which pieces you want for the half pieces. So I'm going to use these as my half pieces, and I'm going to use these as my full pieces. So I'm going to put those aside for 1 minute. And I'm just going to put the pieces that I'm going to be using for my half pieces back together. Now these need to be cut in half. I'm just going to make sure they're all nicely lined up. And these need to be cut at the half at the 3-inch mark. So I'm just going to count 3 inches, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to line that up nicely along the bottom. And then I'm just going to cut along there. So these are going to be my half pieces. So these are going to be this bit, and these are going to be this bit. So you've got your 2 bits open for putting your hands in. Yeah. Now, the next stage is you want to put these together, because we're going to sew 1/4 inch along the top of this, not round the edges, just across the top. And then on these ones you're going to do the same again. You're just going to sew along that bit. You're going to leave these bits and just sew that straight edge. So I'm going to clip all these together. You could use pins, but I love these clips, they're so easy. So now I've got all those pinned together, I'm going to go to the sewing machine and show you how I sew them together. Right, so I'm just going to sew these now, and I'm going to chain piece them all. So which means I'm just, instead of cutting each piece off individually, I'm just going to sew one and then carry on with the second one. So I'm going to turn the machine on. I'm going to reposition my needle. And then I'm just going to back stitch to start with. And then I'm just going to go forward. And then instead of taking that one out and cutting it off, I'm just going to go straight on to the next piece. Go back stitch again. As you can see, they're all in like a little chain, and you just snip them apart. And that saved all the faffing about at the beginning and ends, cutting each one off as you go. I'm just trimming up all my ends so they're not going to be stuck out in my work later on. It's always better to cut them off as you go along. So now I'm just going to take these and I'm just going to get the little ironing board out and I'm just going to open the seams. And I'm just going to iron them flat like that. I hope you can see that. So I'm just going to open them up and iron them flat, and then I'm going to fold it over and I'm going to iron those flat so I've got a nice crisp straight edge to them. So we'll do that. I'll show you what I'm doing. Right, so I've laid this out and I've just like literally finger press that open just to keep it open while I iron it. And I'll just sort of press it open. And then when I've done that, I'm just going to fold it over. I'm going to make sure my lines are nice and crisp along there. And then I'm just going to steam. Press it again. So that that's nice crisp line. So, just going to do this one as well. Right. So as you can see, nice clean edges. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these to the sewing machine and I'm just going to do a top stitch quite close to the edge, just to keep them nice and crisp when I've sewn them on. I'll reposition the camera and show you what I'm doing. Right, so as you can see I'm at the machine. I've just lined this up so that it's like about 1.5 millimeters away from the edge, and I'm just going to do a row of top stitching just to keep that nice crisp edge. And again, I'm just going to chain stitch all of these. Right, so that's those all chain stitched. Just cut those off. And then I'm just snipping the strings off. There we go. And then there's it. Now we're going to go and put all the pieces together. And get ready to sew them all together. Right, so as you can see I've got all those pieces I've just made, and then I've got the 2 sets of each of the backing bits and the front bits. So what you want to do now is you want to decide which one you want to be this piece and which one you want to be this piece. So I think on these I'm going to put this as this piece and this orange piece as this backing piece. So how we want to start putting these together is you want to put the orange ones down first, then you want to decide which way round you want these. Now I'm going to put the red one at the top that way round, and then I'm going to put that one, the bottom one, that way round. But if you wanted you could put them both the same way round, but I just decided to give it a bit of variation. I'm going to do it that way round. So you need to put both sets of those together. Right, the next thing you need to decide is whether or not you want, I've got like these little hanging loops on these, and I've just used a bit of rick-rack because that's quite simple. So you just need to decide if you want some of that. So I'm going to put a little bit of that on here, so I'm just going to grab some of that. I'm just going to cut. You don't need it very long, you just need it long enough to just do a little bit of a loop. Depending on the size of the hook you're going to be putting it over. So I don't know if you can see that. I've just done a little length like that. I'm just going to cut a second piece. And then I'm just going to loop those. I'm going to get my clips. Just going to decide roughly where I want it. You could measure this if you wanted to, but I just usually eyeball it. It's pretty accurate. And I'm just going to put one of those little clips on there just to hold that in place. Now if you wanted to, you could measure it. You could get your tape measure and you could say the bottom of that's an inch up, so I want to do this next one an inch up. So you just fold it again and just put that at an inch up, but I can just eyeball that. Make them about the same height. So that's that together. Now you need to put the top piece on. This is what's going to be the top, face down, on top. And then next you want some Instabrite. Remember I showed you the Instabrite at the beginning? You just need to cut 2 Instabrites and then 2 of the wadding that I showed you. I've already pre-cut these to save time. And if you look on the Instabrite, I don't know if you can see this on the camera, it's quite hard to see. One side is very slightly shinier and the other side is slightly fluffier, and you want to put the shinier side face down and the fluffier side up, and you just want to line those up as carefully as you can. And then on top of those goes the layer of wadding. And then you just want to put some clips all the way around these. Now remember, you've still got this one here that you haven't clipped on the top. This is just holding your, this one here is just holding your tab in place, so it's not on the top, it's just on those bottom layers. And just leave that there until you're about to go over it with a sewing machine. Otherwise your little tabs will move out and you won't catch them correctly. So I'm just going to pin the second one and then I'll come back and show you how I'm going to sew them. Right, so as you can see I've finished pinning those together and I'm back at the sewing machine. Now on my sewing machine I've got something called a walking foot, and it looks a bit like this. And what it does is, with an ordinary foot you've got feed dogs underneath that pull the fabric through, but the top foot is smooth, so it just sort of slides through that. When you're doing a lot of layers like this, because there's an awful lot of layers on this, if you can see that's quite thick, the walking foot has the teeth at the top as well, so it pulls the fabric through from the top as well, which makes it more even. They're not very expensive to buy these. I think you can get them quite cheaply depending on how often you're going to be using them. You know, you can get them for sort of £3 to £5 on eBay. If you're going to be using it a lot like I am, you might want to pay a little bit more for them. I've probably gone through about 5 of these in the last year because I use them so much. So it's an idea to buy one of those. So I'm just going to set this up. I'm just going to show you how this walking foot works. I'm going to sew mine from this side. If you see this, if I'm starting on this side, this is where the little tab is. So I'm going to be very conscious to make sure that I'm getting that. So I'm just going to put that under. I'm just going to back stitch at the beginning. And I'm going to go quite slowly with this because it's so many layers. You don't want to just whiz along and it be out of line. So, and I'm going to make sure I hold that tight where I've taken that pin out to hold those in place until I've gone over them with the sewing machine. And then when I've gone over them, I'm just going to back stitch over them just to make sure that they're nice and secure and they're not going to pull out. going over there. Just trying to make sure it all lines up and that nothing's moving. I'm just going to get to the corner. And then as you can see, my sewing machine always stops with the needle down. So I'm just going to lift it and I'm going to pivot. So I've got a nice clean corner. And then off I'm going to go again. And I'm just always mindful that the fabrics are all moving together and they're not moving too much. Just going to get to the top. And then again, my needle stays down automatically, but if yours doesn't, you might want to turn it round so it does. I'm just going to do one more stitch. And then I'm just going to pivot to come down the other point. The needle up, and then I'm going to pull that out. And then snip off my ends. And that's it sewn all the way around. I don't know if you can see it better on that side because it's sort of pushed the wadding in. But I've stitched it all the way around, but I've left this bottom bit open, so I've literally just gone up the sides. I've just gone up the sides along here and down, and I've left the bottom completely open. Just going to do the second one and then I'll come back and show you how I turn them round. Right, as you can see, I've sewn round both of mine. Now you need to trim off these corners, and you can just get a pair of scissors and just trim quite close to your stitching but not over your stitching, like that, on all the corners. But what I like to do, just to take away even a bit more of the bulk, is I like to go around the edge of mine with some pinking shears. Move that out of the way so it doesn't rain bits on it. I like to go around the edge of mine with some pinking shears, just to thin it all down a little bit. Right, by trimming these corners off, you're just taking the bulk out of them a little bit so that they, when they turn round, it gives them more of a point to them. If you didn't trim that off at all, your corners would be very, very rounded, because you'd have way too much bulk in them. You wouldn't be able to get a nice sharp corner to them. So as you can see, I've just trimmed, not too much. I haven't gone over my stitching. I've gone as close to it as possible, but not gone over it. I'm just going to do the same with this one. Right, now what you're going to do is you're going to go to your opening at the bottom, and you've got your layer of wadding, your layer of Insabright, and your first layer of a fabric, which should be what's going to be this outside piece. And you want to go in on that bit there, and you want to turn it round. You want to turn it inside out. That's the advantage of leaving the whole bottom open. It gives you plenty of room to turn it round, and you're not struggling so much as you would be as if you just left a couple of inches. It's much harder to turn then. So turn it out as best you can by just using your fingers. Just wiggle those out a little bit. If you pinch them together and just wiggle them, it will come out a bit. And then I'm just going to get I've got a long pair of tweezers here I quite like for this job. I'm just going to go in between fabric in the Insabright, and I'm just going to give those corners just a little push. I've seen people doing this with scissors, but I always think it's far too risky. You're going to poke a hole straight through your fabric and ruin all your hard work. So I don't know if you can see that. I'm just literally, I've just got a pair of, they're quite blunt ended, they're not sharp, and I'm just going through and I'm just giving those corners a little bit of a poke, just to poke them through. So there you go. Then you just want to wiggle those lines down a bit. So now you've got it like that, you can begin to see it taking shape, but you've still got this bottom area that's completely open and raggedy and tatty. What you're doing is you're just taking this and you're just turning it over so that it's on this side, like that. And then all you're going to do is you're going to sew all the way along there, quite close to the edge. So what I normally do is I normally do a row of stitches really close to the edge, and then I come in about 2 millimeters and I do another row of stitches, and then in between those 2 rows I do a zigzag so that I know that's completely sealed. So I'll turn the other one round and then I'll take you to the sewing machine and I'll show you how I'm sewing those up. I'm just going to back stitch at the beginning. As you can see, I've still got my walking foot on because we're going through a lot of layers. Just going to go right to the end, and I'm just going to back stitch a little bit. And then I'm going to come right up to the edge, right on the edge, and I'm just going to come up a couple of stitches. And then I'm going to turn around and come back down on myself. So I'm going to come back to the beginning. I'm going to cut these off because I don't want them getting all caught up in the sewing. So I'm not cutting them off, I'm just literally turning around and coming back the opposite way. I'm just going to back stitch there as well, just to make sure it's nice and secure. Just going to come along in a nice straight line. Back to the beginning, just going to back stitch again. Okay, and I'm going to turn my work back round again. I'm going to lift my needle and I'm going to change my stitch to a zigzag stitch, and I'm going to decrease the width down to I think about 1.5 and decrease the length down to 1.2 because I don't want a great big long stitch. I just want a nice small, very small stitch. And I'm just going to test by doing needle up, needle down to make sure I've got it within my 2 lines, and then I'm just going to go all the way along to the end. Back stitch at the end and cut my strings off. I don't know if you can see that, it's not focusing very well. I don't know if it's going to focus, but I've got like a little zigzag stitch in between 2 rows of stitching. Right, so to finish these off, all you're going to do, if you can see, we've done both of them, sewn them at the bottom. They're still inside out at the bottom. You're just going to trim off very close to the corners and just trim off any excess along there that you can, but not going through the stitching. Just to tidy it up and take away any bulk at all that you've got there. I'm just going to do that with both of them. A bit, and then that's it basically. There's a little bit of a thread there, I'm going to cut it off, and then you just turn them back the right way. and then you just need to work these little corners out to make them as square as you possibly can. I like to just wriggle mine out and then get my tweezers to just give them a little bit of a push. And that's it, that's your finished product. So that's your little oven bit there. And they're much handier than those great big bulky ones, or you know, you can get the ones that are long, that have got a hand on either end. These are much easier, you can just use one. I always find these much easier to grab stuff out of the oven than the great big thick ones, you know, the hand shaped ones. These are much better. So I'm just going to turn this one round as well. Right, now if you'd like a chance to win a set of these, all you have to do is press the like button, subscribe, and then put a comment on the bottom of this one and share it on your Facebook pages. So you've got to like, share, comment and subscribe, and for each one of those things you do, I'll put you an entry into the draw, and then next Wednesday I will draw a winner and we will announce it on the video on Friday. So that's the set we've just made. So the winner could choose from between those or those. So make sure you put in your comment which set you would like. So I don't know if you can see all these. So you've got another set there that's got like a pink and red. You've got one there, sort of like a greeny colour and a blue. Or you've got like a blue zigzag set there. So if you'd like to win one of those sets, just like, subscribe, share and comment on this video which set you would like. The winner can choose whichever one of those sets you would like. Okay, so thanks for watching and see you on the next video. Bye.